everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and I just realized I don't need my headphones for this, but I wanted to make a video, a couple of videos actually, to talk about everything that was very important that was brought up in the recent kind of community live stream that we had from Creative Assembly, which was super duper fun. I got to see a lot of my favorite peeps there. Josh and Steve getting to make an appearance is super duper awesome, and anyone from Team Sophia, Milcho is awesome, and they're all super duper cool people. So it was nice to actually see some faces I recognized, and it's good to see Total War attempting to rebuild that sort of more regular contact with the community. Hopefully it'll end up being for the best. It's just one of those things that we're just going to have to wait and see as time passes. But they did talk about some various aspects of what's going to be coming in the future. And for this video, I wanted to talk a bit about their mentions of what will be happening in 6.3, which is going to be the next major beta release, or not beta release, that's Proving Grounds, but the next major update to the game, which in addition to having, you know, a good amount of stuff focused on the sieges after we get through the siege Proving Ground beta and things, it's also going to more importantly come with updates for the Tomb Kings and the Lizardmen. So I kind of wanted to just make a little thing talking about what I personally am hoping for in light of what they said. So, because I could come on here and like, I have a whole script that I'm already got all the bullet points for that has like everything I'd love to see for the Lizardmen rework and every mechanic I would want to tweak and everything I want to do and all that jazz. But at the end of the day, in the rally point, we saw that there is a scope. And I think it's really important that when we talk about these kinds of things, we try and focus within the scope that we're provided. So for instance, one of the things they said in the video, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and play the video here, and I'll just let us get word for word everything from Steve and Josh to see what they have to say about it, and then we'll come back and actually discuss.
Just something little looking at the community. But before we get onto that, I just wanted to address something with you guys regarding what we put out in the release update, was specifically to Lizardmen and Tomb Kings. Now, I know there's been a lot of chatter. We've seen a lot of chatter around this and around Lizardmen and Tomb Kings and what we're going to do to them, sharing your expectations, your hopes, your dreams, and all that. I want to clarify, these are not going to be full reworks for Lizardmen and Tomb Kings. These updates are going to be focused on quality of life improvements in 6.3, aiming for these races to kind of improve their core experience. So we want to look at things, we're looking at things like tech trees, bringing them in line with some of the other races in terms of power, rebalancing, new effects, things like that. Buildings, hero recruitment and rank that you can get from these buildings, bringing them in line with some of the other races. For Tomb Kings, there's going to be a new minor feature that they're aiming to put in as well. There's more to share on that nearer the time, because obviously we'll put a blog out and you'll get more info about that. For Lizardmen, there's some new blessed units, alongside some other improvements as well that are being looked at there. Bug fixes and tweaks, I know they don't sound exciting, but those things under the hood you may not realize affect the gameplay with these specific races, but that's something that we're looking at all to be discussed nearer the time, but with the aim of making Lizardmen and Tomb Kings experiences more fun and engaging in general. But yeah, just to clarify, they're not full reworks to like the level that you've recently seen with Kislev, for example. So I just wanted to put that out there and let you guys know, just to quell craziness. Yeah, because I know you guys be crazy.
I see a lot of people saying the words Geomantic Web. I don't think a rework of the Geomantic Web is within the current.
That's not within the scope of this. No,
the QO update, but it's.
No.
I mean, we're fully aware. If everyone in the chat's saying it, don't you worry. We're fully aware of what you guys are talking about there.
Yeah, people have heard the words Geomantic Web,
yes. So
yeah, we'll see what can be done. It's being looked at.
All right, so here we can see kind of the framework we're working in. So for instance, the Geomantic Web seems like it's just not going to be touched at all. And, you know, obviously I would love to see the Geomantic Web reworked, but I would also rather wait for them to have the appropriate amount of time and resources in order to do said rework. I don't want them to just throw in a Geomantic Web Rework just because they know everybody wants it, but they don't actually have the time and resources to commit to it properly. So it ends up just being something that's worse than what we currently have, or just, you know, just isn't interesting, but then they've wasted time on it and yada, yada, yada. So for this, we're looking on some very, very specific things. So the big one that they mentioned right at the start is, of course, the tech tree, which starting with the Lizardmen, and I'll get to the Tomb Kings in a minute. The Lizardman tech tree is pretty damn basic. It definitely needs a significant rework. Right now, it's just numbers, right? It's just stat boosts and stat changes, but there is a lot of really boring stuff in it. It also has a really bad habit of, if it's not like a Saurus or Skink specific infantry unit, then most of the tech tree only gives it like one upgrade, you know, combat wise. But I'm really excited for the potential of what we could see, allowing more types of tech. One of the things I've really liked about the newer tech trees as we've gotten deeper into Warhammer 3 is that tech trees are starting to be a little less about just flat stat buffs, and more about adding like new passives and new interactions and things like that. So like a good tech, in my opinion, is the tech that gives all skink infantry units poison. That's a great tech. Making sure they all have poison melee attacks, that's super duper awesome. That functions very, very well. So seeing new abilities and attributes and all those things introduced for other groups, I think would be really, really nice. But I have faith they'll do a good job with the tech tree. That's usually something they're pretty good at. So in light of the fact that this is a smaller update to these factions, it's, you know, it's not full reworks, it's more of a narrow focus. What would be the things that I would really, really, really want to see? So a big one for me is I would love to see the Slann improved. Now this one's a little tricky because there are two ways they could go with the Slann, and because of the nature of this rework, I think they're kind of forcing themselves to go one way when I might have recommended the other, which is that, in my opinion, it probably would have been a good idea to tie the Slann system to the Geomantic Web. And what I mean by that is, currently in the game, Slann you get through performing a rite. Once you've gotten like a full 20 stack, you can perform the rite every certain amount of turns, and it basically pulls up a list with the 9 Lords of Magic, and you pick one, and then it gives you a randomly determined Slann trait based on one of the 4 generations of Slann that you could conceivably acquire. So 2nd generation, 3rd generation, 4th generation, 5th generation. The problem with the current system is that it kind of just feels like an RNG gotcha pull, which is not what we want in Total War, which just gives you a random trait and you're always hoping for 2nd generation, because 2nd generation is just objectively the best and the other 3 are garbage in comparison. So it kind of forces this weird system where you have to just spam the rite every single time it's available and just keep picking the lore you like until you get a 2nd generation Slann, and then you go, oh, okay, I've got one, and then you can move on to the next one, which I don't think is good game design. It shouldn't be about randomly trying to get like the best thing you want, unless you're just like a super hardcore someone that likes to maximize their RNG stuff. So my original proposal for this that I wrote down in the video I was making, and I still intend on making, would be tying into the Geomantic Web, where based on how powerful you've managed to get the Geomantic Web, you know, if you have like a level 1 system, you get, you know, you like can't get a Slann, but once you get to level 2, you can get 5th generation, and then level 3 gives you 4th generation, level 4 gives you, wait, did I do that right? Yeah. Level 2 gives you 5th, level 3 gives you 4th, level 4 gives you 3rd, and then level 5 gives you 2nd generation Slann. Yeah, that's what it should be. And that would be a nice way of making it where it makes sense for the trait to be more powerful, because you have to earn it, right? So that's different than it just being like a random pull. However, it seems that they're not going to be messing with the geomantic web in this particular update, unless that's something they can kind of sneak in a little easy. But let's assume that they're just not going to mess with it at all. So what would be the current idea? Well, in my opinion, the best thing to do would be to lean into the idea that the Slann, the older Slann, are more powerful spellcasters, yes, but they're also much more they're not as aggressive, they're not as like actively taking charge and being super aggressive in combat and wider battle scenarios, whereas the younger Slann have significantly more energy that they're able to contribute when it comes to leading armies and dealing with like full-on combat scenarios. So what I would recommend instead is making it where each, if you're not going to use the geomantic web idea, making it where each of the different generations of Slann has a speciality, so to speak. That way the RNG system from the Rite of Awakening is not a punishment when you don't get a second generation, it's just different. So for instance, your second generation Slann are more powerful casters, so they have the, you know, the lowered miscast chance. Maybe they have increased spell range. They have a larger Winds of Magic pool, etc., etc. But if you have a third generation Slann, maybe his gimmick is that he's slightly more aggressive and specialized in battle scenarios. So maybe he has a higher magic spell intensity. So he doesn't have as long of range of spells, and maybe his overall Winds of Magic meter isn't able to be as high, but he specializes in that his spells are a little bit more effective. Maybe he has access to an additional bound spell, or maybe he has like superior experience per turn for all units in his army, so he gives like 100 experience per turn to all units in his army, which the second generation doesn't. And then for your fourth generation Slann, maybe you have a Slann that's more aggressive and like active. So you have a Slann where it's like, okay, this guy has combat bonuses, so he has slightly better combat stats, and when he strikes enemy with a melee attack, he causes like the dampening effect on them, so it, you know, maybe he, or, you know, he does some kind of debilitating effect where maybe he lowers their resistances or he causes their stuff to go on cooldown. Maybe he has access to, maybe all of his spells have shorter cooldowns, so he's able to cast spells more frequently than the other Slann, or, you know, things like that. And then the fifth generation Slann you make just very aggressive, where he's not the best spellcaster, like he's the worst spellcaster of the different generations, but he specializes and he has significantly higher campaign movement. He has he offers like improved stats to the units in his army, so the units in his army maybe have improved leadership and improved melee defense, and he takes more of an active role, and maybe like characters in his army are buffed. Maybe if you have a second generation Slann, they get buffs to Temple Guard units, whereas third generation Slann give buffs to things like the various dinosaur units, and fourth generation Slann give more buffs to skinks, and then fifth generation give more buffs to regular Saurus. I'm just throwing out ideas, but making it where they're all slightly different, but they have cool focuses. Because in my opinion, the Slann generational traits right now are really, really bad. Oh, I mean, they're not horrible, but the fact that there's really no great difference between them, other than they just get better. Like, they have the exact same gimmicks. It's just that the numbers get bigger, right? Which I don't think should be the case. In a perfect world, they should tie it into the geomantic web. If they have the opportunity to do that with 6.3 is just like a minor improvement to the geomantic web, I would love that, but that's neither here nor there. Another thing that I would really, really like to see included in this is, I think most of the legendary lords for the Lizardmen are pretty solid, have really good faction traits, they have like noticeable gimmicks and everything. The one exception, in my opinion, is Lord Mazdamundi. I think Lord Mazdamundi needs a slight tweak. The big thing that I would do for him personally is that I think he should have a faction trait that improves all Slann in his faction. He is the Slann legendary lord. He should make all Slann lords better. I would very simply, or maybe he just makes all spellcasters better. That could also be reasonable. That way it's not as pigeonholed. The big thing that I would do for him is I would make it where all Slann in his faction get like a bonus 20% spell intensity base, including him. So him and every single Slann in his faction just have 20% strong, more powerful spells. Great, awesome, no complaints. The last thing I would say for Lord Mazdamundi is I have a very personal, but I think very justified request, which is I am begging Creative Assembly. I am begging Creative Assembly to switch out one of his spells. Currently, Lord Mazdamundi has a very okay spell list. My problem with it is that his first 4 spells are all buffs and debuffs. So you don't get any damage spells until you get to his 5th and 6th spell, which means when you play a campaign with Lord Mazdamundi, he has 0 damage spells at all. He has no way to deal damage besides like melee attacks until at minimum, I think he gets the level. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So level 7 would be the earliest you could get a damage spell if you only go up the spell tree, which I just think is very unacceptable and makes in really bleh, his campaign design. Plus, his spells are not very good in sieges. He's very, very focused on like Comet is good in a siege, but it's a lot of investment. I would really love for him to have a cheaper spammable spell that he can use to really harass enemy units and deal damage earlier, like at level 1. So what I would recommend is currently Lord Mazdamundi has a 3-2-1 system where he has 3 spells from the Lore of Heavens, 2 spells from the Lore of High Magic, and 1 spell from the Lore of Light. I would recommend keeping this system, but changing it to where it feels like he's actually good at like the supreme lore, where he should have 3 spells from the Lore of High Magic, 2 spells from the Lore of Heavens, 1 spell from the Lore of Light. And the way I would handle that is I would remove Harmonic Convergence, which is his level 1 basic spell, and I would replace it with Soul Quench, which is the level 1 basic spell for High Magic, which is a pretty nasty magic missile. It has relatively good aim. It's really nasty if you get like a good side shot or hit it into a blob, because it actually applies a debuff effect that, if memory serves, deals damage over time. So you get like the initial damage of the missile itself, and then it also deals some additional damage. And I think it would just make him so much better. It would give him like a nice level 1 spell that he could fire very reliably. It works really, really well with his kind of innate gimmick where he has significantly longer casting range, because magic missiles benefit from that super duper well, as do direct damage spells, but he has a level, his 5th spell is direct damage. But I am begging you guys to make it where Soul Quench is his first spell instead of Harmonic Convergence. I don't think it would make him busted. Harmonic Convergence, it has its uses. It's not a horrible spell by any means of the imagination. Like it can be very, very useful in a number of scenarios, but I really just think it would just make him feel so much better as a character, especially when you're playing this campaign. That's just something I'm personally very passionate about, but I will now move on to other things. Okay, so we got 2 more things we really got to hit on, one of which is a little bigger. You know what? I'm thinking, looking at the time, I think this is just going to be Lizardmen, and then I'm going to do a follow-up video tomorrow where we talk about the Tomb King stuff. I think that's going to be the better choice. So, I'm going to skip over my Geomantic Web notes, not going to touch them, and I'm just going to go straight to Blessed Spawnings. So I have 2 notes on Blessed Spawnings. The first is that all characters should have access to Blessed Spawnings. And what I mean by that is currently in Total War Warhammer, only the Saurus Old Blood has access to the option to be a Blessed Spawning. All of the other characters in the game just don't, which I find very silly, because in Tabletop, every character except for the Slann could receive a Blessed Spawning. All of them. So I think that should be maintained, where if you're playing, with one exception that I'll get into in a second, but like if you're playing a Source Scar veteran, you should have the 6 blessing options. But obviously, you know, they're similar to the Old Blood ones, but they're retooled when necessary so that they work for a hero rather than a lord. The Skink Priest, same thing. The Skink Chief, same thing. The only exceptions should be the Red Crested Skink Chief Lord, where he should not have 6 options, he should have 1 option, which is that he gets the Blessed Spawning of Sotek. Easy peasy. He has a Blessed Spawning of Sotek skill that, you know, he unlocks at the same level as the rest of them unlock theirs, and it gives him just some nice damage buffs and makes him better. The Troglodon character, the Troglodon hero, the Skink Oracle, also I think should have some sort of Blessed Spawning. He's a little bit funkier of a case because it's not ever explicitly said in the lore what exactly his blessing is. You could argue it's the blessing of Sotek because he has the twin tail, he has the split tail, which is an indicator of Sotek's favor. Like that is one of the signs of a Sotek spawning is red crest, split tail. But the Skink Oracles are never explicitly said to be a sacred spawning of Sotek. So you could argue, but I personally think it would be fine, because then there would be a hero and a lord version of the spawning of Sotek character. So I would go spawning of Sotek for Troglodon and Skink, Red Crested Skink Chief. So there's that. Character should have access to blessed spawnings. Crocsgore Lord, same thing. And that takes us to the actual blessed spawning system. So one of the things Steve talked about in the video is that it sounds like they're adding more blessed spawning units, which is very exciting. That's super cool. I have an opinion. And what I'm about to suggest is probably too much. It's probably too sophisticated of a system, and that it might not be possible with the resources and time that they have to make 6.3. I'm going to say it anyway. And then at the end, I'll include like a shorter version of what I would recommend. And I'll try and throw up some stuff. But anyway, so when it comes to the blessed spawning system, in tabletop, there were 6 blessed spawnings that you could give to units. There are actually technically 7 you could give to characters, because there was the blessing of the old ones, which made your character like albino and gave some really good buffs. But that's kind of what Gorok is. That's kind of like Gorok's gimmick. But in any event, so you have the 6 blessed spawnings that exist in tabletop, and what I would do is I would make it where every single Lizardman unit can receive a blessed spawning. But they, instead of making it where when you get a blessed spawning unit, you do a quest, it unlocks like, oh, you got 3 blessed chameleon skinks, good job, and then you just recruit them and that's it. I don't find that very compelling. Instead, I would make it kind of similar in a way to Throt the Unclean system, where what I would do is that you get a lot of these quests with the various Lizardman factions, but instead of it just giving you a unit, it gives you like a currency. So let's say it gives you like blessed spawning points. I don't know. You could probably make something cooler than that, but like sacred plaques or whatever. Bring back the sacred plaques from Warhammer 2. But it gives you a resource, right? And what you could do with this resource is you could do how it worked in tabletop, which so the last edition you actually could use blessed spawnings was 6th edition Lizardmen. And the way it worked is that you'd pick a unit and you could give them a blessed spawning, but you could actually have more than 1 blessed spawning for a unit if you were willing to pay more points. So I mean, I even got my old my book here. It's super raggedy. Just to say that it's well loved is a grotesque understatement. But yeah, funny enough, Scar veterans could take up units could take up to 2, which would cause them to become a rare unit, which was pretty cool. So anyway, so yeah, it's got duct tape holding it together because when I was little, here you can see the sacred spawnings page, because they were actually called sacred spawnings back here, not blessed spawnings. But anyway, so what I would recommend is you get this currency, and you have the 6 major old ones that would give blessings, and each unit in the entire roster could be upgraded by purchasing one of these 6 upgrades for them. And just like in the 6th edition book, I would also make it where it becomes exponentially more expensive, but you can give them an additional blessing, so they could have 2 blessings instead of just 1, making them like way more powerful. So what I would do for the blessing themselves is I would loosely base them off the tabletop version, which I'll try and throw up like a PDF version of the image or a JPEG or whatever here on screen. But the 6 are, so you have the Sotek. The blessings of Sotek the Serpent God should grant some form of an aggressive combat buff that's relevant for the unit in question. So for instance, maybe most units, like your Saurus units, if they get a blessing of Sotek, they gain poisoned attacks, which would be really powerful. Croxagors could gain, once again, poison attacks. But with your skink units, since they're already going to have poison attacks, maybe skink units, instead of getting poison, get frenzy, for instance. So they get the frenzy upgrade. And it could be like different buffs for different units. So maybe like Saurus get one type of buff, Croxagors get a different thing for Sotek, Skinks get a different thing for Sotek, and then your dinosaur units get a different thing for Sotek. That way there's kind of like these different categories. Next you have Zunki. So blessings of Zunki, the god of water, should prioritize mobility, especially with water features. So this should grant things like the Strider trait, the aquatic trait, and just improved speed stats on units. Very straightforward, solid, good. The third one is Tlaxcotl. Blessings of Tlaxcotl, the impassive, should prioritize leadership buffs. So things like immune to psychology, granting the encourage aura, and just general improvements to leadership. Maybe for some absolutely batshit crazy units, it could be like it gives them fucking unbreakable or whatever. Quetzal. Blessings of Quetzal the Defender should focus on defensive buffs around survivability, such as immune to flanking trait, expert charge defense, improved armor, maybe buffs that ignore certain kinds of or like greatly reduce damage taken from certain kind of things, improve physical resistance, stuff like that. Itzal. Blessings of Itzal, the Trihorn god, should focus only on mounted units. In tabletop, by taking the blessing of Itzal, it literally just meant, oh hey, you can ride mounted stuff now. That's how it works. So this one should be unique among the 6 blessed spawnings, of that it can only be given to mounted units. So it can be, and like your creatures. So it should only be available to like cold ones, feral cold ones, your feral dinosaur units, any of your dinosaur units that have riders, your pterodons, your ripperdactyls, your salamanders, your your horned one riders, all that jazz. And what the blessings of Itzal should give you is the units that get access to it should get things that synergize well with fast-moving monsters and cavalry, such as the devastating flanker trait, glorious charge, and other types of appropriate buffs for those kinds of units. But Itzal should not be available to any form of infantry. No skinks, no Saurus, no Croxagors, no Temple Guard, etc. Finally, we have Huanchi. Huanchi the Jaguar god should focus on ambush and stealth tactics, along with buffs for forest fighting, by granting units things such as the Stalk trait, Sniper, Woodsman, and Vanguard deployment. Post recording Sotek, because I actually forgot 2 sacred spawnings, so I'm just going to randomly insert myself and include those 2. Because as I was like, oh, I need to put this image on the stream, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to. So Chotek, the god of the sun, is all about energy, and the Saurus and the Lizardmen behind him being like very energetic and powered. So you'd very much, I think, want the buffs coming from the blessed spawning of Chotek to be things like perfect vigor, or flaming attacks, or things that allow units to, you know, remain very like pump and energetic. So honestly, I think just veering between things like Perfect Figure and Flaming Text would be totally fine. And then the last one, we can't forget Almighty Tepok, the god of the air, who's also really, really known for being extremely anti-magical. And the big thing for him is that although you could do spell resistance, nothing wrong with spell resistance, it can be a useful trait, just like how I recommended physical resistance for Quetzal as one of the possible upgrades. So you could do spell resistance. I would also think the dampening attacks would be really good. So the ones where they hit enemies and it lowers their spell resistance to represent kind of like Tepok's mastery. And also maybe something that's able to mess with cooldowns or magical attacks, actually. Yeah, I would actually say magical attacks. So maybe magical attack, spell resistance, and dampening attacks. Maybe you could like throw in, like maybe you could give, I don't know, elemental mastery to some kind of appropriate unit like Engine of the Gods, or that's what I would probably make it for characters. But in any event, there's that. So that is the 8, not 6 main blessings. And then the 9th one is the Blessing of the Old Ones, which we talked about earlier, is we're character only and really would make sense only on Gorok, as the system is kind of set up. So yeah, back to the video. Super duper well, because it would make for a much more interactive and fun system for the Blessed Spawnings, and would make it an actual mechanic rather than just kind of like quests that you get that just poop out units, right? Not to mention, this could solve the issue that CA may feel like they're having between the DLC versus core unit arguments. As if you don't own the appropriate Lizardmen DLC, you just don't have access to those units, so you can't make Blessed Spawnings of them because you just don't have access to them. This could also allow for some fun additional unique traits for all the Lizardmen lords by giving all of them discounts to different kinds of blessings. So for instance, Tehenuin and his faction could get a faction-wide discount on the Sotek blessing cost. So maybe instead of costing like 10 sacred plaques to upgrade a unit to have the blessing of Sotek, it only costs 5, for instance. Tic-Tac-Toe could receive buffs for, or discounts for Itzel buffs. Gorok could receive discounts on Quetzal buffs. Or maybe they could have something like, what if Krokgar, instead of getting debuff or discounts on a particular old one's buffs, what if Krokgar gave discounts to all monsters getting buffs rather than anything else? So for instance, all of his monsters, all of their blessed spawnings are 2 points cheaper or whatever, but it's not individual old ones, so it costs the exact same for all of his other units. You could do the same thing where Nakai gives discounts to all Kroxgor units, but doesn't give discounts to any particular old one. And then Oxiodal gives discounts to all Chameleon Skink units and Chameleon Stalkers and stuff, but not to other units. So that would give every single Lizardman Legendary Lord their own unique discount, unique discount for appropriate units. And for Mazdamundi, I'd probably do something like he gets discounts for Blessed Spawnings on Temple Guard, right? My last request. Okay, so that's all the stuff I'm hitting on this. All the stuff. It's just a couple little things. It's just 30 minutes, guys. It's just 30 minutes of yapping worth of Lizardman crap. My last thing that I'm going to talk about today, as part of what I think could theoretically be included in 6.3, but I wouldn't be heartbroken if it was, because this could wait forever. This could wait until a later update. Please give the Dread Saurians their unique gimmick from Tabletop. So for those that don't know, the Dread Saurian, if I have the book behind me, which I do, had a really cool rule. And once again, I'll try and get this page up on the screen as I talk about it. But the Dread Saurians had a unique set of 5 upgrades they could take. If I put this up here where you can see it. But once again, I'll try and put up like a PDF version and stuff. But basically, you could equip your Dread Saurians with Old One artifacts that made them nightmarishly powerful. Like, made them so goddamn scary that it was stupid. Like you could give them things, you could give them one that would, like if you were to translate into Total War terms, you could give them one that made them have like the devastating charge rule, or a glorious charge rule, and they also got flaming attacks on everything. And maybe they also like occasionally explode when they're in combat. You could give them another one which made them ethereal. So in Total War terms, giving one that gives them like a 40% physical resist on top of all of their other defenses. Or giving them one that gives them like a really nice like let's say, how would I even translate this? I'd probably translate this one as like plus 10 melee defense, and also causes significant leadership problems to all, or actually I would say it removes immune to psychology from all undead and demonic units, because we've seen that, right? Like Harry the Hammer can make undead have a really bad time. If you get the Golden Shroud of Flascodal, it should give you it gives a really bad time to undead and demons. You have another one that should reduce the speed of the Dread Saurian, but should make their armor go up to something absolutely stupid and they become unbreakable. And then the Huanchi buff, which should give them Vanguard deployment, Strider, and also like plus another 20% missile resistance. Just stupid shit like that, right? Because you could implement it into the system I was talking about, or you could make it its own separate system. But the thing that was super duper scary about this in particular was you didn't have to take just one of these. You could take all 5 on one Dread Saurian, and it was just it was basically unkillable outside of some very specific circumstances. It was ludicrous, and I loved it. So I would really love to see the 5 Ol'1 artifacts get implemented some way, somehow. That would be really, really funny for me in particular. But anyway, that's it for my hopes for 6.3 Lizardmen updates. If I had to pick one of them, I would easily choose the Blessed Spawning update. Like, if we could make it where it's an actual mechanic, like, you could keep the exact same quest system. It's just that it spawns a currency. So maybe make it where the quests happen more often. That way you're able to get, like, a nice regular amount of the currency. And perhaps you could introduce the ability for, like, you know how the Tomb King characters, all of the Tomb King heroes especially, have like a blue skill ability that just passively generates canophic jars every turn? Maybe introducing something like that to the Lizardmen heroes, so they all passively generate sacred plaques every turn. I just think that would be cool. And if they use sacred plaques, they could just take the assets from Warhammer 2 and they wouldn't even have to make a new asset. It would be that easy. So anyway, that's everything I have to say on that. Please do let me know your thoughts down below. If you had to pick like one of these systems, which one would you prioritize? Do you like my idea for the Blessed Spawnings, or do you have a different one? Is there something else you'd rather do? How do you feel? You know, do you want to see the ability to make Uber Dread Saurians in campaign, which could actually make the Dread Saurians feel more appropriate for having their goofy ass unit capacity limit, where you could only have so many of them on the campaign map at the same time? Well, if they could upgrade to be stupid OP bullshit like this, then that would be like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense. You know, stuff like that. So do let me know. I think that's everything I've got for Lizardmen. The only last thing I'll say is that if they can't do that due to time or whatever, they really need to have a fresh look at the Blessed Spawnings that we do have. Like, of course, I'd love to see pretty much every unit get access to a Blessed Spawning variant, but the ones that we currently have, some of them really suck. Like, all of them have slightly more health, but like, Blessed Spawning Saurus with Spears have the Woodsman trait. Okay. Like, kind of not that interesting on an infantry unit, but alright, I guess. Like, you know, the Blessed Spawning Saurus, those are really, really good because they have perfect vigor, which is nuts. Like, they're awesome. But most of the other ones, like, oh, Skink Skirmishers, I think have improved magic resist or spell resistance. Okay, I mean, that's all right, I guess, in certain scenarios. but like most of them are barely percent. Like Blessed Temple Guard have, I think, twice as high of a charge bonus. What? Like that completely goes against the point of the unit. Like, oh, look at all these buffs they have into like charge defense and charge reflection, and they're like, they're so stoic and stuff. And then the game's like, hey, the blessed version of that unit is supposed to charge. So don't use all those defensive buffs because I want you to use offensive buffs. Like, what? So please, 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 CA, make Blessed Spawning School. Please and thank you. I will make a video later, not anytime super soon, but later, about like overall Lizardmen reworks, because the Geomantic Web, I have ideas for it. But that's it for now. Thank you all very much for watching. I will be back tomorrow to talk about the Tomb Kings, and what I really, really hope, they didn't mention that the Tomb Kings are getting a new minor mechanic, so I have an idea of what I think that is, but we'll talk about it tomorrow. Thanks for watching.